3 with the title of Child Laborers in the Tobacco Plantation in Klaten, 1870 until 1930. So the first one will be held by Dr. Tiara. Since October 2016, he has been a PhD candidate at the University of Antwerp, where he's preparing a dissertation of practice of transnational child displacement. Her research aims to unravel the links between power and care, and she's interested in the history of family planning, parent, and also motherhood and post-colonial migration. So, the next question.
Thank you. Is this working? Yeah, it is. Selamat pagi. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this kind introduction. I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to the organizers of this public workshop and to the Universitas Gadjah for their invitation. I'm one of the researchers working on this project about the history of faith-based childcare in Indonesia at the Radboud Institute in Amsterdam. And I'm so very honored to be here because, especially because I am very much a newcomer to Indonesian history. My previous projects have mostly been about Central African history. From 2020 until 2023, I was a research associate at the State Archives of Belgium, where I worked on a project called Resolution Métis. And this was a project which concerned in-depth historical research about the forced separation of mixed-race children under Belgian colonial rule in Congo, Rwanda, and Burundi. And this project also included an archival program to improve accessibility of archival records for the involved communities of families. And by the end of 2023, our team had already assisted more than 350 individuals and their families in finding relevant archival documents and in retracing their origins. Can we please move to the next slide? And one of these people we assisted during this project was a man formerly known as Safari. Safari was one of the many names given to him when he grew up in Rwanda under Belgian colonial rule. As a young boy, he was placed in an institution for mixed-race children, also known as Métis children. In 1960, on the eve of Rwandan independence, he and approximately 350 other children were flown to Belgium, where they were placed either in foster care institutions or with adoption families. Disconnected from his family and homelands, Safari grew up with many questions. Who are my biological parents and why did they leave me? Why and how was I brought to Belgium? Safari had managed to collect some old documents and photographs, but they could not provide an answer to all these questions. The Resolution Métis project, as well as the Children Colonial Connected website, has assisted Safari in connecting his personal memories with documents from governments and institutional archives that shed new light on the multiple separations he experienced during his childhood. And it is his story that I will tell you about today, hoping that it resonates with some of you and might inspire you to think about the transnational and the global dimensions of colonial child separation. Next slide, please. But first, I will tell you something about Colonial Children Connected, which was already briefly mentioned during the keynote of Professor Monteiro. The Colonial Children Connected website was one of the outputs from our internationalization project, Children as Objects and Agents of Colonial Change, which ran from 2018 until 2022. And this project reunited several European researchers who were studying colonial interferences in children's lives as a strategy of colonial civilizing projects. And the website showcases several life stories of colonial children who were subjected to colonial and post-colonial separations. Now, three key aims form the backbone of this website. First, we aim to reconnect the fragmented stories of children who have been disconnected from their families and origins. So the website aims to bridge the gaps in these stories by uniting personal memories with documents from government and institutional archives. Secondly, we connect different archival sources that contain snippets of information about the separated child's life. Snippets that have often been scattered across different archival institutions and that have been very difficult to access for the involved communities. And finally, the website aims to connect academic findings with public interests, informed by the needs and expectations of the impacted communities. We acknowledge that these stories can be presented from many different perspectives, and we also encourage visitors to contact us whenever they have information that may help us to fill the gaps in the stories of the children involved. Now, in what follows, I will guide you through Safari's story via several photographs and documents which have been scattered across different archives and combined to generate unique insights into the lives of colonial children in faith-based care. And although he grew up in Central Africa, so very far away from here, Safari's story shares similarities with those of children, especially children of Indo-European descent, who were brought up in institutions in the Dutch East Indies, which I hope we can further reflect upon during our discussion. Next slide, please. So throughout the period of Belgian colonial rule in Congo, Rwanda, and Burundi, children of European African descent were separated from their indigenous families. Colonial agents received specific instructions to identify children who had been quote-unquote abandoned and to bring them to Catholic or Protestant institutions where they would receive a more European-oriented upbringing. So much like in the Dutch East Indies, paternal recognition had a large impact on one's legal and social status. If the European father had not formally recognized his biracial child, this child would be considered legally and socially abandoned regardless of the actual living conditions. Safari was born in 1950s and was 4 years old when he was brought to the institution for mixed-race children in Save, Rwanda, which you can see here on the map. So Rwanda is a tiny, tiny country in Africa, almost as tiny as Belgium, where I'm from. Next slide, please. So the Save Institute for Mixed Métis Children was run by a congregation, a Catholic congregation called the Missionary Sisters of Our Lady of Africa, otherwise known as the White Sisters, who began to specialize in the care for Métis children from Rwanda, Burundi, roughly since the early 1920s. Save is located in the highlands near the Rwandan and Burundian frontier. It's at least half a drive away from urban areas. So the children grew up in both spatial and social isolation from the rest of African society. These children were not allowed to speak indigenous languages, could not receive visits from their African family members who were presumed to have a negative influence on their upbringing. Yet in this very isolated experience, the pupils also developed intense friendships. Throughout his life, Safari would remain in touch with many of his classmates, pictured here, sitting in the refectory of the institution. The photographs like these and the memories they evoke often teach researchers more about the everyday lives of these children than institutional documents do. Because of this alienation from their native communities, the headmistress of the orphanage feared that Métis children would become targets of violence during the impending decolonization conflict. The Save Institute cooperated with Belgian adoption agencies and placement services, as well as with colonial authorities in both Rwanda and Belgium to expedite the evacuation of the children. Between 1958 and 1961, approximately 300 pupils of the Save Institute, including Safari, were relocated to Belgium. Next slide, please. So from the archives of the colonial government, which are kept in Brussels in the state archives, we learn more about Safari's multiple displacements. When boys in the Save Institute reached the age of 8, they were sent to a different boarding school in the area to pursue further education or to learn a trade. In 1958, Safari was sent to a boarding school of the brothers Marit in Mada. By that time, several religious and administrative authorities in the region started working together to organize the transfer of the children to Belgium. In this letter that we see here from 1960, the head overseer of the boarding school requests the authorities to establish a series of documents necessary to organize Safari's departure. The multiple stamps indicate the urgency of this request, hint that the relocation was organized in a hasty and chaotic manner. Remarkably, in this document, Safari is mentioned under an entirely different name. We do not know where this name comes from or who gave it to Safari, but it demonstrates how these children were given plural and changing identities, arguably to conceal the link with the European family. The fact that the document mentions the mother's name but not the father's name further supports this hypothesis. Next slide, please. And one of the necessary documents was a form in which the legal parent consented to the child's transfer to Belgium. Now, for children who were not legally recognized by their father, it was the African mother who had to give official consent. Now, this document, as you can see, is signed with a fingerprint, which is often one of the few traces left by African women in colonial archives. For historians, it remains difficult to assess to which degree the mother was aware of the consequences. The fingerprint, for one, alludes that she was illiterate, meaning that she might not have fully understood what she was consenting to. Moreover, it seems fair to question the extent to which the mothers could refuse to sign these papers in front of colonial agents. Similar documents show that women who showed resistance were often subjected to various strategies of intimidation and manipulation. When we look closely at the document, the form only mentions the release of the child's custody and an agreement to let her son go to Belgium to pursue his education, but not to fully relinquish her parental rights or have Safari adopted by another family. This all shows that these types of documents must be interpreted with great caution. Both for researchers and the people whose lives they document, these files often conjure up a lot more questions than they provide answers. Next slide, please. So after arriving in Belgium, Safari resided at Home Bambino, a foster home on the outskirts of Antwerp, one of Belgium's largest cities. And this home was owned by a Catholic adoption agency, where the children temporarily resided until they were placed in a foster or adoptive family. And in 1962, the renovation of the villa, pictured here, was financed by a fundraising initiative in local Catholic philanthropic networks. And this postcard, you can see here, was distributed as part of this fundraising initiative. Now, the visual language of this postcard, the little mixed-race girl all alone by herself, arguably enhanced the perception that mixed-race children were abandoned and had no one to look after them. Now, the adoption agency firmly believed that children were better off in families than in institutions, a pedagogic paradigm that gained global prominence during the 1950s. Through interviews with former residents, however, we learned that prospective adopters could have a child stay with them during the weekends just to see if the child formed a good fit in the family. Safari was placed in 6 different households before he was eventually adopted by a family in Ghent, in the Dutch-speaking region of Flanders. Now in Save, in Rwanda, the children were exclusively raised in French, so most of them experienced difficulties to adapt to an exclusively Dutch-speaking environment. So in spite of the adoption agency's lofty ambition to provide Safari with a more stable childhood through adoption, Safari was once again subjected to multiple social and cultural separations and continuously had to adapt to his new circumstances. Now, the following document was found in Safari's personal record kept at the immigration office in the capital, in Brussels, at the Ministry of Home Affairs. And it features an excerpt from the alien registry of the city of Ghent, the city where he lived with his adoptive family. And as Safari had not been legally recognized by his European father, Safari did not acquire Belgian nationality. Instead, he resided under alien law, which profoundly limited his access to civil and social rights. Like many other Métis children transferred to Belgium, Safari was throughout his life confronted with many legal and administrative problems. While they often did not possess Belgian nationality, the children were also excluded from acquiring citizenship in their African homelands, because the independent governments no longer recognized certificates issued by the former colonizer. So this document also shows that the alien registry erroneously registered Safari as being of Congolese rather than of Rwandan descent, further complicating the naturalization procedure. Consequently, Safari spent his childhood as a stateless individual until he obtained Belgian citizenship in 1968, so at the age of 18 years old. Although their childhoods were marked by multiple disconnections, the now elderly pupils of Save and their descendants have since united themselves to amplify their voices and claim their rightful place in Belgian as well as Congolese, Rwandan and Burundian post-colonial memory. In 2018, the Belgian Prime Minister issued a formal apology to the mixed-race children who had been separated from their families and approved a series of reparation measures. Last year, at the blessed age of 73 years old, Safari finally received an official birth certificate. Today, Safari has dedicated himself to creating connections between the colonial children he grew up with. On social media, the former pupils of Save have created a digital space to bring their personal memories and experiences in conversation with emerging historical understandings that mark their upbringing as a part of colonial and an assimilationist project. These digital memory spaces also serve as reminders that their stories defy easy categorization of black and white. Instead of trying to resolve or negate the ambiguities in their stories, their interactions and memories hold space for experiences of both affection and loss, both of care and coercion. And the more we take into account these varied experiences, the more nuanced our stories will become, and in turn, also our histories. And with that, I leave you with a warm invitation to check out the Colonial Children Connected website, which you can do by scanning the QR codes, where you can learn more about Safari's story, as well as discover other stories about colonial children from Indonesia and from all over the world. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kiara, for the presentation. And for the next presentation, will be conducted by Dr. Hayu Aji Dharmarasri, with the title of Child Laborers in the Tobacco Plantation in Klaten, 1817 until 1930. He is a lecturer at the History Department in Universitas. And this is yours. Thank you.
First of all, I want to say thank you to Islamic School Committee, especially Mr. Prof. Sorry. Thank you to Dr. Akusubia for giving me chance to explain participate in this panel. talk about some findings in my presentation. Title: Child labor on tobacco plantation in Klaten, 1820 until 1930. Just for information, I'm writing the PPT. I got idea about this topic, child stories from Professor Dr. Purwanto. He said, why don't you write about child? And that's a good idea. So I did it very hard, but I'm happy and finished the dissertation. Even though not that, I think it made me want to more write about that story. So I got child labor on tobacco plantation in Klaten, 1820-1930. The usage of child workers in the plantation is one of the widely unlooked social realities of the Netherlands Indies in the context of Indonesian geography. Majority of the topics about children only covers the lives of the nobles and realities, such as the daughter of the nobles Raden Antakartini. In contrast, the narration about the children of Monteiro is unheard. Economic pressure due to low family income makes the life of children of Monteiro different. Lack of family income requires children as family members to work to earn additional income. Agrarian is a work sector that often uses children as labor. One of which is tobacco plantation. There are some conditions which support children to become a labor at the Netherlands era. First, the different concept for children. The concept of children as regulated in the Netherlands Indies at the end of 19th century is different from children concept in Indonesia at present. According to Undang-Undang Number 23, 2002 about child protection rights, the child is someone below 18 years old, including someone that hasn't yet been born. And according to Undang-Undang Number 15, 2003 about employment rights, child is someone below 18 years old. So it's different about from years. But the early concept of children in the Netherlands Indies was not this based, but rather based on physical capabilities of children, especially female child. Mark of adulthood for female is the first menstruation to get married. Regardless of their age, thus didn't count as a child anymore. You can see this picture. She is a 12 years old, but has a baby. The mark of adulthood for male than children is khitan or circumcision. It is the first step of adulthood today. But as the influence of Islam getting stronger, parents take circumcision early. Usually when baby, they did circumcision to the baby. Thus, khitan could not be defined as the mark of adulthood anymore. The male adulthood is only seen from physical capabilities estimated at 15 years age. Next. condition will support children become labor is the value of children in the farmer families. Students in farming communities in Java are not valued as individuals who have the potential to develop and be start, but rather as a source of auxiliary labor. By the time a child is able to work and considered capable of working, they are required to work to help their parents both at home and in the field. Gadjah says that in the rural areas, it is common for 8 years old children to help their parents earn a living. Likewise, the report written by the Angelino regarding the death of children in the rural areas of Klaten in 1929, state that village children at the time had learned to be independent from an early age and were able to protect themselves from accidents that occurred. Next. And the job that usually done by children in the rural areas to have their parents work, such as girls cook full rice and vegetables, like the photograph, clean the house and the yard, delivering food for the parents at the field, collecting wood and picking vegetables in the field. And for boys cook hard livestock, cutting grass, cutting ducks or helping the father to tend the rice and tobacco field. Agriculture sector is the main employer of child workers, especially the plantation workers. Economic condition is the main factor that forces parents to utilize their children to work to increase their family's income. By working at the tobacco plantation, they could get 9 months of income during the tobacco planting period. The establishment of land rent system in Coastal London since 1818 increases the number of private capital owners who rented the land and opened plantation companies in the Surakarta region. More plantations were opened in the region of Klaten, Boyolali, Kartasura, Gadjah, Karanganyar, and Monteiro. The land were widely used to plant commodities such as coffee, sugarcane, and tobacco, which has high selling prices on the global market during the time. Tobacco produced in Klaten is known as Coastal London tobacco, one of the 3 best tobacco products in the Netherlands in that era. Dairy tobacco, Isuki tobacco, and Coastal London tobacco. The rest of urban plantation requires more workers. The increasing needs for workers give way for women and children in becoming paid workers for the plantation, with a preferred option of the plantation owner because of the compliance to be paid less than adult male workers. As the Dr. state that post-agricultural crisis in 1885 has caused more women and children looking for work, only to be paid cheaply. The wages of female workers were half of those of male workers, where the wages of child workers were 3/4 of the wages of adult male workers and half of those of female workers. Next. Why the family worker like to work in tobacco plantation? Working in tobacco plantation is preferred by laborers' families compared to working in another plantation such as sugarcane, coffee, or indigo. Work time was considered not too long, like 9 months after harvest period. And working in tobacco plantation could mobilize all family members. So, father, mother, and child. More family members got mobilized to work on the plantation, so the more income the family will earn. By involving the farmer's wife and children in the work, it makes it easier for the plantation company to get the labor for the plantation. Next. There are some kind of work for child labor in the tobacco plantation. First, usually looking for tobacco leaf caterpillar. Tobacco plants attracted many types of pests. One of them is the leaf caterpillars that has to be picked by hands, one by one. Not only caterpillars, children are also deployed to catch other pests that attack tobacco leaves, such as insects. And because this job is posted too easily and will only earn low wages, only children laborers will want to be adult laborer want to get a job. Children who work on the tobacco plantation are divided into two groups: child worker below the age of 12 years old and teenager or adolescent workers over 12 years old but still below 15 years old. Next. Second type of work, laden or helper for adult workers. Laden is the term for male or female children which were employed as a servant for adult female workers in the workstation of receiving and measuring tobacco. Laden workers who flatten and dry the tobacco plants, moving the floors, turning dry tobacco, and helping to stack dry tobacco. And third, Pandian. Pandian were tasked with separating bundles of tobacco from the stack and doing other laborers' work. I can find the photograph, but and next, Jembrengan. Jembrengan is the term for children who work in the tobacco leaf sortation, usually done by female children or teenagers. Jembrengan is responsible for smoothing the dried tobacco leaves so that they are easy to sort according to shape and color. In the tobacco leaf sorting warehouse, each female sorter brings 2 or 3 small children, usually under the age of 12 and usually women. These girls are her own child, some are the daughters of the neighbors or children of their acquaintances. The adult female sorters whose job is to flatten atau menjereng and sort tobacco leaves to save time and energy because the work of flattening leaves was done by the Jembrengan children. Next, Jembrengan is a teenage Jembrengan. You can see from this body. This adult female worker prefer to be helped by younger children rather than teenagers because of their obedience and they didn't demand high wages. According to Dr. Angelino on the tobacco plantation in Klaten, small children were paid 2.5 until 4 cents per day, while older girl or teenager want to pay 8 cents or 100 bundle from the 20 cents received by adult female sorter per sorting. For information, the adult female sorters called Bambang. Next, this is a photo about sorter in Gamayanti. Sorter bukan ditangkap oleh namin Gamayanti di Jakarta. Next. As a consequence of the just membership of the International Labour Organization or ILO in 1922, the Dutch government signed one of the conventions issued by the ILO which concerned the prohibition of the use of child labour and the regulation of night working hours for female workers in industry. The practice of using child labour as workers continued until the issue of government regulation in 1925 that limits the age of children who is allowed to work with a minimum age of 12 years old. However, at the plantation, there were still those who used underage child labour. The group of entrepreneurs who objected to the child labor law mainly came from tea and tobacco plantation owners. The rejection also raised from the owner of cassava, fiber, oil, and coffee plantation that utilized many female and child laborers. In an effort to comply with the child labor law that prohibits the employment of children under the age of 12, tobacco plantation manager then replaced child worker with teenager worker. Their age is usually 12 until 16 years old. Next, my conclusion. Tobacco plantation companies in Klaten were not only using adult laborers, but also using child laborers illegally under the pretense of becoming helper for the adult laborers. Those companies has been using underpaid child workers since 1820 until 1930. Under the development of the land utilization system by the government of Nasional Jakarta and the Dutch colonial government, there were regulations which affect the use of children as cheap workers in the plantation. The plantation requires many workforces to work on the field. To fulfill the need of abundant workforces, the companies hire small families of workers, including the wives and the children, with more people working in the field. The use of children as labor by the tobacco plantation faces restriction when the Dutch colonial government issued a law limiting the age of child workers. The tobacco plantation strongly objected to the child labor law, and finally the tobacco plantation replaced the use of child labor with teenager or adolescent labor, although there were still tobacco plantations that violated the regulation. Finally, I want to share a video about the child labor in tobacco plantation in Klaten. When the dissertation finished, I found this video and I'm so happy to find this video because support my dissertation about the extent of child labor. But some of people still think that there are not child labor in the last cities, but that's a fact. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation, Dr. Marit. So the next agenda is for the question and answer, and anyone who wants to ask him a question about the materials that already being presented by the two women in the
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for the presentation, for our speaker this morning. So, before I start with the question, I would like to express the gratitude of the research from Dr. Kiara. It highlights the actual interesting points and also archival milestone, we can say, towards the safari journey, and as a mixed children descendant. So my question is related to whether is there any political intervention related to whether Congo or political intervention from the Belgian government related to this phenomenon become possible in that period of time. And I'm really interested whether, as you said previously, Safari is being transferred to the Belgium area where he received by the actual Catholic institution. And I'm really interested why it should be, or whether is there any alternative options towards the institution that receive this kind of mixed children. Is there should be a Catholic institution, or maybe is there any alternative option like military or maybe social workers or something? So this one be explored further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. And for the next question.
I would like to thank both people for the questions, specifically for Ali. I really enjoyed your presentation, so thank you for that. And I was wondering if you could comment a little bit on how working with families is a traditional Japanese agriculture. By the children, so they grow actually in the work they have to do for the family, and there is so child labor, but it's within the context of a family survival, agricultural survival system. We have seen the same kind of systems in 19th century Europe, for example, that the whole family is working with it, and I think there's a huge change this transfers to wage labor, to plantations, both for family composition and hierarchies within the families, but also for the kind of labor that is done. And so, do you have any indications of the differences between these two systems?
Thank you very much. So I think there's two questions that you can answer.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your question. So regarding whether this was about the political interventions and the role of the state, as far as our historical understanding goes, as far as what we know right now about these type of practices, this was very much a system that was authorized and even initiated by the state and by the governments. So as early as the late 19th century, Belgian colonial presence was first established in 1885, so it was quite a late colonial project. But as we know it, starting from 1890, there was a specific set of laws that actually authorized children who would be determined as abandoned to become wardens of the state. So these children were actually put under state custody. They actually became children of the state. And then the state outsourced the upbringing of these children to Catholic or Protestant institutions who were willing to take in these children. The majority of the institutions that took in these children were Catholic because now it still is, and even then at the time Catholicism was the majority religion. But we do know that there were a couple of Protestant institutions as well taking in these children. And then for whether the children would be placed in a family or whether they would be placed in an institution, this is an interesting question because it was a question that was kind of posed by different colonial authorities throughout this whole period. And we can really see a shift in the 1950s. And this is linked to global changes in pedagogical understandings as well that started to kind of criticize and also disqualify institutional upbringing and really highlight that institutional upbringing could be damaging for children as well, something we also saw this morning during the presentation of current children's upbringing practices in Indonesia. So this was very much believed that has historical roots as well. And then throughout the 50s, there were the Catholic adoption agency that mediated Safari's placement. They were very convinced of adoption. However, there were other agencies, placement agencies, that said actually these children had an institutional upbringing all their life. It will be difficult for them to adjust in a family, and it's better for them to stay in an institution where they can live with their former classmates as well, to have more continuity in the life of the child. So it's quite an interesting discussion. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for the question. Honestly, I'm still confused about this. You mean about the system that you said about it, but I think, of course, there are the different systems, and make that child labor before the 1925 in the Indonesian, there are not system with regulation about child labor, so make plantation or not only plantation, child who want to use child worker can use them easily, but after 1925, they can get that really. So maybe that system with one system with make it different. Yeah. But child only did what their parents ordered about to them. So I think not not a big different about the system. Thank you.
Okay, so that brings the question.
Can I?
Ah, yeah.
If not, it's all right. Is it all right to leave it? I would like to ask Adi a question as well. You explained that it's an informative question. I was very struck by the video you showed. And you introduced it by saying, I finished my dissertation and then I found the video that confirmed everything I explained in my dissertation. Can you say a little bit how you found the video and where do you find the videos such as this? Is there a visual archive, historical visual archive? Where did you find the video? Just it seems a stupid question, but for a historian it's very relevant. Where do I find my sources? Sorry.
Yeah, I only find in YouTube.
Oh.
Sampai surprise gitu. Kenapa nggak dari dulu dapat gitu? When I finished my dissertation, not finished, almost finished. The video come and I'm amazed with the video. Kenapa nggak dari pertama saya menulis ya ada ini YouTube I found it. I'm very thanks to God. I don't know the owner of the video. He just said his name Bimo. And I make criticize about the video too. It's real about journalism in 1927 or not. And the audition people is the same with the audition at the time. So I can use it to support my dissertation.
Thank you very much. So we can encourage the students to look into YouTube as well for their sources.
So I think because of the time is limited, so I will try to sum up the presentation. First of all, I find it really interesting about the presentation, and I think both of the topics are intertwined. Dr. Chiara with her transnational framework, and Dr. Haili with a local perspective, and also with Dr. Chiara with the personal memories of Safari that unravel the transnational and the global child separation by using personal archives that provided by the government and the facilities institutional, and also how the issues of the state of Savaris himself, and also like about how he got transferred to the Belgium and the consent by his mother because he was not recognized by his European father, and also how the consequences of the transport process itself, and also how the issues associated with the registry as a stateless person. He was until 18 years old in 1968. He was received his Belgian citizenship. I think this is very interesting because he was not being acknowledged as his uprooting in African communities. Instead of that, he got his Belgian citizenship. And also, for the Dr. Hayu's presentation, I find it really interesting about how the long away topic is rarely being discussed, and also like there's also a difference between the term or concept of children and adolescents in Indonesia, and also how the Japanese values also operating in it, and also we can conclude earlier that from the presentation from Dr. Laksmi earlier said about the Japanese values, that it can be identified from the families child labor from the Dr. Sayyid's presentation, and also how the family's tradition or family's values is having some kind of rising or the causing by the plantation company that happened in the begin in the from the 20th century. And also the rise of the plantation requires more workers, and also it includes the children workers. And I also just got notice about the paying, but they got 3/4 wages of adults and half from the female workers, and also the kinds of the works that they were doing, such as being caterpillar or insect in general, from the list of tobacco, and also the term of Bambang. I think that derived from the Japanese language. They were sorting the tobacco and smoothing the dry tomatoes. I think that's it. Thank you for Dr. Kiara and Dr. Ray for the presentation. I'm returning to Ms. Marit.
Okay, thank you for the speaker and Mr. Radboud who chaired this first panel session. Dear ladies and gentlemen, for the next session is the lunch time. The lunch will be served at outside the venue. For the participant can eat your lunch in this room. And for the participant who want to pray Zuhur, you can do in Musola Al-Adab, located in front of Segundo Room. Please note that after lunch at 30 p.m., we will hold another session. Thank you.